Bracing for flight disruptions on this Thursday night. The blame game between Air Canada and its flight attendants on the eve of a strike or lockout.
We have passed many offers across the table.
The company has left the table, not the union.
Will the federal government intervene as flight cancellations begin? Dozens of homes lost to Newfoundland and Labrador's largest wildfire, and the arson charges laid against one man. Plus, blaming Canada, the American ambassador's take on Trump's trade war.
Canada is the country that has pulled the rug out from USMCA.
And Willkommen, Vancouver Whitecaps fans in a frenzy as a German superstar joins the team.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We could know by noon tomorrow whether the federal government will intervene in the labour dispute between Air Canada and its flight attendants. Canada's Jobs and Families Minister says the union has asked to have until then to respond to the airline's request to refer the dispute to binding arbitration. If the minister acts, a strike or lockout would be averted. In a statement, Heidi says to the parties, I strongly urge you to come to an agreement. Do not waste this precious time. Canadians are counting on you. She also says the best deals are made at the bargaining table, but it's unclear if any talks are planned. As Neetu Garcha reports, the airline has already begun cancelling flights.
There's turbulence for passengers of the country's dominant airline as Air Canada begins cancelling flights.
We're here now trying to fight with them for give us a new flight today.
I expect them to deal with it in a way that doesn't disrupt travel.
The airline is offering impacted customers refunds or alternate travel arrangements without a flight change fee. But with peak travel season, few options are available.
They can't just leave a passenger stranded on the godforsaken airport. We don't know where to go.
We find CUPE's decision to strike very regretful and the impact that this is going to have on our customers.
Air Canada says it expects to make several dozen flight cancellations by Thursday night, climbing to 500 by Friday, all leading up to a full system-wide grounding by 1 a.m. Saturday, affecting about 130,000 passengers per day, including some 25,000 Canadians abroad.
We are heartbroken that Air Canada is forcing us to go on strike just so we can earn the right to be paid for our time at work.
The airline is asking the federal government to invoke Section 107 of Canada's Labour Code, a provision that gives the Labour Minister authority to send disputes to binding arbitration. The union rejected Air Canada's offer of consensual arbitration, claiming the airline walked away from talks. But Air Canada denies that, saying it stayed at the table and calls the union's demands unsustainable. In a social media post, Minister Heidi confirmed the airline's request for binding arbitration and says she's asked the union to respond. Other carriers like Flair and WestJet report a surge in last-minute bookings.
The few seats that will be left will be gone. Bottom line is people who have trips scheduled, they're out of luck.
Air Canada is cancelling flights, flight attendants are standing firm, and the government is hoping not to have to invoke Section 107. But with a full grounding just hours away, time may be running out. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
Canada remains locked in a tariff war with the U.S., and though negotiations are said to still be going on, Canada's Prime Minister has said no deal is better than a bad deal. Well, now the American ambassador to Canada says there is still considerable work to do and that Canada, he says, has pulled the rug out from the North American free trade deal known as CUSMA. Mackenzie Gray spoke with the ambassador in Ottawa today. Mackenzie, what did you learn?
The vibe is still off between Canada and America when it comes to trade negotiations, Donna, with U.S. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra saying a considerable amount of work needs to be done to try and reach a deal, and that the biggest U.S. complaint is the fact Canada retaliated at all.
There's two countries that have been relatively harsh against the United States, and that's China and Canada.
That harsh retaliation counter tariffs on things like orange juice, motorcycles, and appliances, goods that have been covered under the Canada-U.S.-Mexico free trade deal, a move that has seriously upset the Americans.
We haven't done that, but Canada has decided that, that's fair game. We will, call into question CUSMA.
But it was President Donald Trump who originally called into question the free trade deal back in March, when the first batch of U.S. tariffs had no exemption for Canadian free trade goods. That changed after the stock market started to plunge. But Ontario Premier Doug Ford has warned that the exemption could be dropped at any time. The ambassador wouldn't rule out if the White House would do that, blaming Canada for concerns over the free trade deal.
Canada is the country that has pulled the rug out from USMCA. So for a premier to say, well, the U.S. could pull it out at any minute, the response is, no, Canada pulled out the rug from USMCA.
Hoekstra also upset with premiers who've taken U.S. liquor off provincial store shelves and for telling Canadians to not travel to the U.S. But it's not just policy. For the Americans, it's also personal.
Some Canadian politicians have decided that they will attack the president personally, not on the policy, but them personally. Again, that is a Canadian decision. All we do is respond to it.
Those alleged attacks were a response from insults from Donald Trump, who spent much of the winter calling for Canada to be annexed as the 51st state and levying multiple tariffs that have been repeatedly increased. But despite all of that, Donna, the U.S. ambassador labeled Canadian treatment towards some U.S. businesses as very, very unfair.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thank you. China's 76% tariffs on imports of Canadian canola came into effect today. China did it in response to Canada's 100% tariff on Chinese electric vehicles. But it's Canada's canola farmers who are caught in the middle. Much of what they produce is exported to China. And as Heather Urix-West reports, if the tariffs last, the impact could be devastating.
We woke up to just my farm alone, a $500,000 hit overnight. So, what do you say?
Across the sun-soaked prairies, there is fear and frustration ahead of harvest time. This season's crop is good, but thanks to new Chinese tariffs, all that golden canola could be very hard to sell.
What has been a threat is now reality, and, this is devastating news for Canadian farmers.
China is now requiring a new 76% levy on Canadian canola imports. That's on top of a 100% levy on canola oil and meal imports the country imposed on Canada last spring. The measures are justified officially by Beijing as a means to prevent dumping of Canadian canola into the Chinese market. But the tariffs are widely believed to be in response to the 100% tariff Canada has levied on Chinese EVs.
Well, first of all, let's recognize that China's tariffs on our canola producers are totally unjustified.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says the federal government should look for new ways to penalize China while working quickly to compensate farmers he says are being unfairly ignored.
Why aren't the tariffs from the government is collecting on Chinese EVs and other Chinese products being flowed back to the canola producers in Western Canada?
The premiers of Manitoba and Saskatchewan are also calling for immediate action from Ottawa. On social media Thursday, Prime Minister Mark Carney said he had spoken with Premier Moe and plans to discuss support options with industry officials after they met with federal ministers Wednesday afternoon.
We know now that the Canadian government is actively working on this, so we have to see what they do to see if they go back to the table with China and basically see if we can actually get the tariffs pulled back.
With the fate of a multi-billion-dollar industry on the line, Carney says Canada will be addressing trade concerns directly with the Chinese. Heather Urix-West, Global News, Calgary.
The Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador says up to 100 homes and structures have been destroyed by the largest fire burning in Conception Bay South. That's only an estimate, though, because it's still too dangerous for crews to get a closer look. Several other blazes, including one near St. John's, are still out of control. And as Heidi Petracek reports, there is evidence some fires have been intentionally set.
Mother Nature is giving us a little bit of a break.
As Newfoundland and Labrador battles numerous out-of-control wildfires, there's a little good news. But there's bad news, too, for residents affected by the province's largest fire in Conception Bay North. The fire has ballooned to more than 8,000 hectares and reached yet another coastal community.
There's potentially up to or around 100 structures, 100 homes that have been lost due to the Kingston fire.
A forest fire in central Newfoundland has triggered an expanded evacuation advisory for cabin owners. And in St. John's, where the Paddy's Pond fire forced a partial evacuation in the town of Paradise and put 20,000 others on evacuation alert, illegal fires are taking up precious time and resources. The St. John's Fire Department already busy enough with wildfire assistance.
With everything that everyone is going through across the province, people are losing their homes. And for someone to intentionally set a fire at a time when there's a lot of anxiety out there right now in the public, it is frustrating.
Police have charged a 20-year-old man. He allegedly set several grass fires downtown Tuesday night. He faces charges of arson with disregard of human life and 3 $50,000 fines.
If you see something suspicious, if you see it, report it. Don't resort to social media.
In what's been a tense 12 days, complaints over the new ban on ATVs in wooded areas until at least Sunday today tested the patience of political leaders.
For those assholes who were on the phone yesterday talking crap to our staff, stop it.
The public safety minister reminding residents this remains a state of crisis. And Donna, just to give you a sense of how many resources are engaged in battling the multiple wildfires throughout the province, the provincial government says there are 26 firefighting aircraft in the air alone. Donna.
All right, Heidi Petracek in Paradise, Newfoundland and Labrador, thanks. New Brunswick's largest fire near the city of Miramichi is still out of control. The perimeter has stabilized since yesterday, and an evacuation advisory near the city has now been lifted, but residents have been told to still be ready to leave their homes on short notice. And on Vancouver Island, new video from the province's wildfire service shows some of the damage from the Mount Underwood fire. It remains out of control. It has grown to more than 3,400 hectares in 3 days. Rain is in the forecast and offering some hope, but it's not expected to make a meaningful impact in firefighting efforts. And in Spain, wildfires have killed at least 3 people, including 2 firefighters. More than 9,000 people have been forced to flee there. The European Union is sending 2 water bombers to help after Spain activated an EU disaster assistance program for the first time. Police say a man was arrested today, accused of starting a fire at an illegal dump. And in Greece, a wildfire in the country's northwest burned homes, factories, and more than 500 vehicles. She went from fighting fires to fighting for her health and for compensation. The Vaccine Injury Support Program declares a woman deceased, but she's not. A Global News investigation coming up. A Global News investigation into the federal government's troubled Vaccine Injury Support Program continues tonight with a case that shocked even the person at the center of it. Retired Fire Captain Carol Messenger applied thinking financial support would arrive within months. The program was created during the pandemic to compensate anyone seriously and permanently injured by a vaccine. But what came instead was a letter to her doctor stating that she was dead. Except she is not. Our chief investigative correspondent, Carolyn Jarvis, joins us with more. Carolyn.
No, Carol Messenger is very much alive, Donna, and 22 months after applying, she is still waiting for compensation from the Vaccine Injury Support Program. For 21 years, Carol Messenger,
the cause of the fire is still under investigation,
worked in service of others.
It is suspicious in nature.
But now, the first female captain with Vancouver Fire Rescue Services
that can lead to heat exhaustion
is herself in need of help.
They found a very large 5-centimeter lesion between my T10 and T11 on my spinal cord.
25 days after her second COVID shot, Carol suddenly collapsed.
I was paralyzed literally from the waist down on the backside of my body right to the tips of my toes.
She was diagnosed with transverse myelitis, an extremely rare but recognized side effect of COVID vaccination.
I had a full-time catheter. Everything just stopped and seized up.
So this is our hip hinge.
Through months of physio, Carol relearned how to walk. And at the urging of her neurologist, applied to the Vaccine Injury Support Program, or VISP, for compensation and help with the bills. So determined was Carol to live to the fullest, you can imagine her shock when VISP declared her
deceased. They actually said I was dead.
It was in a letter VISP sent to one of her doctors a year after she applied. 3 lines from the bottom. Deceased claimant.
I don't feel dead, Carolyn. Unbelievable.
Instead of quickly fixing the error and expediting her case, the delays dragged on.
The experience I've had is absolutely deplorable.
The Public Health Agency of Canada promised VISP would provide fair and timely access to compensation and hired a consulting firm called Oxaro to run it. Carol has been waiting 22 months and still hasn't been assessed.
It erodes any confidence that you have.
This expert, who studied vaccine injury programs worldwide, says she's never seen anything like this.
And I don't think anybody would accept this level of administrative snafus, even on a single isolated case. This has to be fixed.
The Public Health Agency of Canada has launched an audit of Oxaro and its management of VISP amid growing calls for an inquiry.
I do think it warrants an inquiry only because I think this is a cornerstone of our national immunization program and we have to get this right.
The contract is up for renewal in the spring of 2026.
And all I can pray is that they will never have this again or ever have the ability to impact people so negatively.
Oxaro did not respond to our questions, but previously said it's working with the Public Health Agency of Canada to adapt its approach and aims to provide a program where all cases are treated fairly with the same care, respect, and due diligence. Donna?
All right, Carolyn Jarvis in Toronto, thank you. Global News has learned the federal government spent at least $170,000 repatriating 8 Canadian women and their children from detention camps in Syria holding people linked to the so-called Islamic State. Internal documents released under the Access to Information Act show Global Affairs Canada paid for business-class flights and hotel stays that included large bills for things like room service, wine, and junk food. The women who had left Canada to live under ISIS were brought back in 2022 and 2023. Several are now facing terrorism charges. You can find out more detail on this and the number of Canadians believed to remain in ISIS camps. You'll find that on our website, globalnews.ca. Next, setting the stage, what's happening ahead of Friday's high-profile summit between the U.S. and Russia. Sudden heavy rain has triggered flash flooding in Indian-administered Kashmir. At least 46 people have been killed and more than 200 others are missing. Torrential weather also turned roads into rivers in New Delhi and other parts of northern India. Ukraine and Russia exchanged 84 prisoners of war today, including a Ukrainian man captured in 2014. Ukraine says 51 of their released prisoners are civilians, and they were greeted with warm hugs by friends and family. Russia says all of its freed prisoners are in Belarus receiving treatment. The exchange is a sign of cooperation ahead of Friday's meeting between the presidents of the U.S. and Russia in Alaska. Both leaders claim they want to work towards peace, but as Redmond Shannon reports, they're going to start without Ukraine at the table.
Ukrainian drones slam into a residential building and a car in different parts of Russia. On a day when new Russian military video claims to show another captured village in Ukraine's east. The man who invaded Ukraine 11 years ago and again 3 years ago praised the Trump administration's efforts to end the war ahead of the Alaska summit. In Vladimir Putin's words, to reach agreements of interest for all parties in the conflict. The Kremlin says Putin will be joined by Russia's foreign minister, defense minister and finance minister. A much more senior delegation than the officials who have met directly with Ukrainians in Turkey this year. Ukraine's president, frozen out of Friday's summit in the near Arctic, landed in London. Volodymyr Zelensky said he and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer discussed security guarantees that can make peace truly durable if the United States succeeds in pressuring Russia to stop the killings.
But I thought the easiest one would be this one. It's actually the most difficult.
The US president spoke ahead of his departure for Alaska, talking already about what he thinks should come next.
The more important meeting will be the second meeting that we're having. We're going to have a meeting with President Putin, President Zelensky, myself, and maybe we'll bring some of the European leaders along, maybe not. I'd like to see it actually happen maybe in Alaska, where we just stay because it's so much easier.
The deals on the table in Anchorage could be about more than just Ukraine. A Kremlin aide says Putin and Trump will discuss the, quote, untapped potential of trade between Russia and the US. Donna?
All right, Redmond in London, thank you. A new Whitecaps era begins ahead, the red carpet treatment for Vancouver's newest soccer superstar. A hero's welcome in Vancouver today for World Cup champion Thomas Mueller as he arrived to play for the Whitecaps. The 35-year-old German was greeted by one of the biggest press conferences the Major League Soccer team has ever hosted. The team says Mueller has already delivered record jersey sales to usher in what the Whitecaps are calling a new era for the franchise. Mueller says he's focused on winning new titles, not reliving the past.
I want to be on the pitch as soon as possible. That's why I'm here. The city is nice, yes, I know. And I heard about it. It's the best city in the world. You said it maybe 3 times in 1 minute, so I believe you. I believe you. But in the end, I'm here for playing soccer. I was used to playing football, now I'm playing soccer.
The Whitecaps sporting director says Mueller's signing has sparked unprecedented fan engagement. That was evident last night at Vancouver International Airport. Hundreds packed the arrivals hall to greet the soccer superstar. He's expected to make his debut Sunday at BC Place against Houston. I'll be there. That is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Your Canada is going global this week. We're showing you pictures of Canadian pride that we've received from all over the world. Tonight, we're showcasing Kingston, Jamaica, a balcony from a Montreal Canadiens fan in San Diego, and a patriotic driveway in Cosenza, Italy. Please keep them coming. Send your pictures from wherever you are to globalnational@globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. I'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.